The thunder cracked as the rain hammered down on rusted metal sheets of the garage roof. Carter wiped grease off his hands and glanced toward the dimly lit corner. There, curled up on an old couch, was the girl he'd found barefoot and shivering. Outside the shop just an hour ago. She hadn't said much, just begged for a place to stay the night. But the next morning, when a black Escalade rolled up and security swarmed the lot, Carter realized she wasn't who she claimed to be, and nothing in his life would ever be the same again. The storm didn't knock. It barged in like it owned the night. Carter Hayes stood alone in the fading yellow light of Hayes Auto Repairs, his sleeves rolled up, arms coated in grease, the sweet sound of classic rock humming from a dusty radio behind him. His jaw clenched. As he tightened the last bolt on a transmission job, he knew he wouldn't get paid for until next week, maybe not even then. Outside, the rain turned violent. The sky cracked with lightning that lit up the single gas heater, barely keeping the place warm. He wasn't supposed to be open this late. Not really. But when you're 31, broke, and raising your late brother's son on your own, there are no shifts, just survival. Then came the knock, not on the door, on the giant rolling metal shutter that sealed the front of the garage. Carter froze, wrench still in hand. Bang, bang, bang. A girl's voice pierced through the storm. "Hello, please, someone, anyone, hello?" He yanked the chain and rolled. The door up halfway, a figure stood soaked to the bone, her arms wrapped around herself in a soaked beige coat, hair plastered to her cheeks, her eyes wide with something that wasn't just fear, something older, something heavier, something like she hadn't slept in days. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said, voice cracking. "Please, just for the night. I'll sleep on the floor. I swear I won't be a problem." Carter blinked. "You drunk?" She shook her head. "No, I just walked here." "In that?" He looked at the flats on her feet, one of them torn, and back at her legs, red from cold. "You're soaked." "I didn't know where else to go." He exhaled slowly, glancing toward the dark office, where his 10-year-old nephew Jacob was already asleep on the old recliner with a blanket up to his chin. Carter didn't do this. He didn't invite strangers in, not anymore, not since what happened to his brother, not since the robbery, not since trust became a thing you couldn't afford. But then he looked at her again. She looked like she hadn't eaten in 2 days, like if she closed her eyes, she might not wake up again. "All right," he muttered. "Come on in, you can take the couch." Her knees nearly gave out. He grabbed her arm, lightly, careful not to spook her, and guided her in. She smelled like cold, rain and expensive perfume, but something told him she hadn't worn that on purpose. She collapsed onto the couch with a long exhale, then blinked rapidly like she didn't trust the warmth. "You got a name?" he asked as he tossed a dry blanket over her shoulders. She hesitated. "Emma." "Emma what?" "Just Emma." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Fine. Just Emma. You hungry?" Her eyes flicked open like he'd said something foreign. "I have leftover chili, homemade. Well, technically leftover from the leftover batch, but I'd love that," she whispered. He grabbed the food, reheated it, handed her a warm mug. She took it with both hands like it was gold. As she ate, he cleaned up his tools, pretending not to watch. But he did. She wasn't homeless, not the way most people were. Her coat had a designer tag he recognized. Her hands weren't calloused. And despite the fear in her eyes, she didn't carry the street instincts. She looked like someone who'd fallen into the night, not lived in it. "I'll be gone by morning," she said softly once she was done. "You don't need to worry." Carter didn't reply. He just nodded and turned off the lights, but he was worried. Because girls like her don't just show up out of nowhere in a storm this bad, and in the shadows of that garage, something about her eyes told him this wasn't over. Morning light crept through the dusty garage windows, painting soft gold. across the oil-streaked floor and the edge of the worn-out leather couch. Carter stirred from his spot at the workbench, where he'd passed out sometime after 3 a.m., with a socket wrench in his hand and questions in his head. The couch was empty. He stood fast, heart hitching. "Emma!" A soft rustle came from behind the partition wall, where Jacob slept. Carter moved quickly, but not loud. Too many years had taught him not to panic with volume. He rounded the corner. She was there, kneeling beside Jacob, watching him sleep, her expression unreadable, somewhere between grief and envy. She looked like someone who had seen better days and now didn't know if she deserved them again. Carter's voice was quiet but firm. "Hey," she turned, startled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I know." He crossed his arms. "He's a heavy sleeper. You okay?" She nodded. "I used to have a little brother. He died when I was 14. Carter blinked. "I'm sorry." She shrugged like it didn't hurt anymore, but her eyes betrayed her. "Can I still wash my face somewhere?" "Yeah. Follow me." He led her through the side office to the small bathroom he used to shave and splash water over his face between jobs. It was clean but humble. A cracked mirror, one towel. She hesitated. "I'll be quick." Carter stepped out and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. 10 minutes passed. When she came out, her wet hair was tied in a makeshift bun, and she wore the same coat, but something about her posture had changed, a little straighter, a little calmer. "I'll go now," she said quietly. "Thank you for not asking too many questions." He stared for a moment, then walked past her, grabbed his thermos, poured half into a plastic cup, and handed it over. "Drink this before you go." She took it. Black coffee, no sugar, no cream, no luxury. "I'm not usually this kind," he said, finally breaking his silence. "But you didn't look like you had anyone." Her eyes welled up suddenly, and she turned her face away. "I don't," she said. That's when a sharp honk echoed outside. Carter's brows pinched. He opened the garage door part way and froze. A sleek black Escalade sat idling on the street, followed by another SUV. 4 men in suits stepped out. 2 scanned the area, hands near their belts. The 3rd adjusted his earpiece. The 4th, with streaks of grey in his hair and a hard look in his eye, walked toward the garage. Emma's voice was almost a whisper. "I have to go." Carter stepped between her and the door. "Who the hell are they?" Her lips trembled. "My father's security team." Carter turned, stunned. "Your father?" I didn't lie. I said my name was Emma, but my full name is Emma Callahan. He blinked. "Callahan, as in Callahan Pharmaceuticals?" She gave a sad nod. "I ran away last week. They've been looking for me." The suit reached the doorway. "Miss Callahan, your father is worried sick." She stepped out slowly, visibly shaking. But before she crossed the line between the warm garage and the cold authority outside, she turned to Carter. "I won't forget your kindness. Ever." Then she was gone. That was supposed to be it. But a week later, Carter found 2 things on his porch: a thick manila envelope and a card. Inside the envelope, $50,000 in crisp bills. Inside the card, "I owe you more than I can ever repay. This isn't charity, it's gratitude. Emma." Carter stared at it for hours. He didn't touch the money. He didn't tell anyone, because the feeling in his gut wasn't awe. It was fear. Something had changed. Something bigger than he realized. And he wasn't sure if it was over or just beginning. Carter didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter like it was radioactive. 50 grand in cash wasn't just suspicious, it was dangerous. He knew better than to believe in clean money wrapped in silence. Jacob was still brushing his teeth when Carter slid the envelope into a locked drawer and walked out into the garage like nothing had happened. But inside, everything had changed. The week that followed was strange. Emma never called, no texts, no visitors. But Carter noticed things. Cars he didn't recognize parked across the street for hours. Men in suits grabbing coffee at the gas station 2 blocks away. His gut twisted with that mechanic's instinct, not about engines, but about danger. Something was humming beneath the surface. Then came the phone call. "Hayes Auto," he said, picking up. "Mr. Hayes, this is Monica Fielding. I work for Callahan Enterprises. Emma requested I reach out." Carter's grip tightened. "Is she all right?" "She's fine, sir. In fact, she's safe now. But she insisted we extend her gratitude beyond monetary compensation. She'd like to invite you to a private event this weekend. An appreciation gala hosted at the Callahan estate." He chuckled bitterly. "Lady, I fix brake pads for people who can't afford Uber. I'm not exactly gala material." "I understand, Mr. Hayes, but Miss Callahan is insistent." A pause. "Dress is formal. A car will pick you up Friday evening. We hope you'll accept." The Callahan estate was something out of a dream or a nightmare. Depending on how you viewed wealth, massive iron gates opened to reveal acres of sculpted gardens, fountains the size of swimming pools, and architecture that made Carter feel like he'd stepped into a movie. He wore the only suit he owned, black, 2 years old, frayed at the cuffs. His boots were polished, but they were still work boots. And he had a knot in his chest, tighter than any tie. The front door opened to reveal Emma, but this wasn't the Emma from the garage. This was a woman in a floor-length emerald gown, diamonds at her ears, hair swept into perfect curls. But when she saw Carter, her face broke into something real, something vulnerable. "I'm glad you came," she said, stepping forward. He gave a stiff nod. "This your real life?" She exhaled. "More like a prison with chandeliers." The house was filled with people, CEOs, investors, politicians in disguise. Carter kept his back straight and his mouth shut. Emma introduced him simply as a good friend. No one suspected the truth until her father entered the room. He was tall, proud, silver-haired and commanding. When he spotted Carter, his brow lifted. "You must be the mechanic," he said, extending a hand. "Carter Hayes," Carter replied. "You must be the billionaire." The old man laughed, a little too loud. "My daughter seems to think highly of you." Carter didn't flinch. "She deserves to be thought highly of herself." Emma's father gave a slow nod. "Walk with me." Carter followed him through the estate to a wide balcony overlooking the hills. "Do you love my daughter?" Carter blinked. "What? It's a simple question. Do you care about her?" Carter's jaw flexed. "I let her sleep on my couch when she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I gave her chili and a blanket when no one else gave a damn. If that's what you mean by care, yeah, I do." The man studied him. "She's set to inherit everything in 5 years. Callahan Pharmaceuticals. The board is watching closely. She can't afford to be linked to anyone who could compromise her public image." Carter's eyes turned to steel. "You think I'd use her? I think you already did." That's when Emma stepped onto the balcony. "Dad," she said coldly, "that's enough." Her voice was no longer soft. It was a blade. "I invited him because he saved me. You didn't even know I was gone for 3 days." Her father straightened. "I sent security. You sent cameras, not concern." She looked at Carter. "You were right to be suspicious of the envelope. I found out my father ordered someone to follow you afterward. For my safety," he said. Carter's face hardened. "You spying on me?" Her father didn't deny it. "I wanted to protect what I built," the man said. "You didn't build me," Emma snapped. Silence. Carter turned to leave, heart thudding, but Emma stepped in front of him. "Please don't go." He looked at her, conflicted. "I don't belong here." "Maybe I don't either," she whispered, and in that moment something shifted. Not between classes, not between lives, but between 2 people who saw each other when no one else did. Carter didn't sleep that night either. He returned to the garage just before dawn, exhausted not from the ride, but from the weight of everything that had been said, or not said. Emma's eyes haunted him. Her father's. Words rang like warning bells. The scent of cologne, champagne, and quiet elitism still clung to his suit. He tossed it on the floor. The garage was his kingdom, not much, but honest. Every wrench had a story. Every dent in the wall meant something. Here, no one cared about inheritance or image, just grit, sweat, and the ability to keep engines and lives running. He didn't expect to see Emma again. But 3 days later, she came back. No black Escalade, no security. Just her in jeans and a worn hoodie, hair tied back, and the same tired eyes he first saw during the storm. "I left," she said, standing under the metal garage door like a ghost returning home. "I turned down the inheritance." Carter stared. "You what?" "I told the board to give it to my cousin, the one who's always wanted it. My father threatened to disown me, so I told him he didn't have to. He already had, years ago." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He said if I walked out, I wouldn't last a month." Carter leaned back against the workbench. "And what do you say?" "I say, I want a job," he blinked. "You want me to hire you?" "I can answer phones, order parts, sweep, you name it." He studied her. This wasn't a game, not some rebellious phase. She was serious. "Emma, I run this place on fumes. I pay myself less than minimum wage some weeks. This isn't glamorous. There's no AC, the coffee's stale, and the clients. Don't say please." "Sounds perfect," she said. The first few days were awkward. Emma didn't know the difference between brake fluid and motor oil. She tried to answer a call with her own disconnected iPhone. She brought a quinoa salad for lunch that Carter poked at like it was an alien, but she was present. She listened. She asked. She learned. And slowly things shifted. Customers stopped by more often, especially the men who suddenly wanted to wait in person for their oil changes. The garage gained a kind of buzz. Emma didn't just change the mood, she changed him. They laughed a lot. She played old-school R&B on the speaker when they worked late. She added cinnamon to the coffee pot. She fixed the Wi-Fi. Carter caught himself staring when she twisted her hair into a bun with a pencil or danced in grease-stained jeans while mopping. But the change came with a cost. One day, a man in a silver Audi pulled into the lot. Clean shave, Rolex, sharp jawline. Emma froze. Her hands trembled. "Who is that?" Carter asked, stepping forward. "That's—" She didn't finish. The man stepped out and smiled wide. "Been trying to find you. You dropped off the grid." Carter stepped closer. "Friend of yours?" The guy extended a hand. "Ben, Emma's ex-fiancé." Carter didn't shake it. He didn't move. "I came to take her home," Ben said smoothly. "Back to reality. We're not done." Emma took a step back. "Yes, we are." "Come on," Ben said, tone shifting darker now. "You're not going to play house in a garage. And forever." "What are you doing, Emma? This guy can't give you anything." Carter's jaw clenched. "Back off." Ben laughed. "Oh, the grease monkey's got bark." Then Emma did something neither of them expected. She walked up to Ben and slapped him hard. Everyone froze. Her chest heaved, eyes glinting. "You don't know what I need, and you never did," she spat. Ben stared. "You'll regret this." "No," she whispered. "I already regret staying as long as I did." He left. Silence hung thick after the Audi vanished down the road. Carter turned to her. "You all right?" Her eyes brimmed. "Not yet, but getting there." That night Carter found her crying softly in the back room. He didn't say a word, just sat beside her. No judgment, no pressure. Then, without warning, she leaned into him, head on his shoulder, hands clinging to his shirt. And for the first time since his brother died, since the world stopped making sense, he let someone in, because kindness doesn't need a reason. Sometimes it just needs to be received. The weeks that followed moved like the slow ticking of a vintage clock, quiet, layered, and filled with unspoken things. Emma stayed, not just physically but emotionally. She stopped flinching when the phone rang. She stopped apologizing for laughing too loud, for asking too many questions, for accidentally calling the hydraulic lift a car elevator. Carter taught her how to change oil, patch tires, and bleed brakes. She taught him how to use accounting software, organize parts inventory, and, perhaps most importantly, how to hope again. But not everyone welcomed the change. Some old customers didn't like the idea of a billionaire's daughter behind the counter, even if she wasn't living like one anymore. Others came just to gawk, and behind closed doors, Carter heard whispers. "She'll leave, they all do." Then came the eviction notice. Carter sat on the concrete steps, head in his hands. Jacob had gone inside to do homework, and Emma brought out 2 mugs of coffee before sitting next to him. "They're selling the block," Carter muttered. "Developers bought half the neighborhood. The landlord's cashing out." She looked, up stunned. "When?" 60 days, she was quiet for a moment. "And if you had the money, could you buy it?" He laughed bitterly. "Sure, but it'd take 3 lifetimes. Emma turned the mug in her hands. "What if I helped?" Carter froze. "No." "Why not?" "Because that's not why you're here. I didn't help you that night to cash in on it later." "This isn't charity, Carter," she said gently. "It's partnership." He stood, tense. "You think just because you gave up your inheritance, you're not rich anymore? You think you understand this life?" She stood too, eyes sharp. "I'm trying to. Isn't that what matters?" They stared at each other, both afraid of the same thing. Losing. This losing them, finally she whispered, "Let me help you stay." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. And that weekend, without telling him, Emma met with a lawyer. She used a trust her grandmother had left her, a separate one her father couldn't touch. She didn't buy the garage for Carter. She bought it with him. She put his name on the deed. When she handed him the papers, he stared at them in disbelief. "You're kidding." She shook her head. 50-50. Full partnership, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Carter's voice cracked. "Emma." She smiled, but her lip trembled. "You gave me a place to sleep when I had nowhere to go. You gave me warmth when I didn't deserve it. You didn't know my name. You didn't care about my past. You just saw me." Tears welled up in his eyes, something he hadn't allowed in over a decade. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in a long broken life, he felt whole again. Months passed. The garage changed but stayed the same. Emma added a neon sign. Jacob got a better desk to do his homework. Carter's shoulders relaxed a little more each day. They started going home together at night. It wasn't a fairy tale. Some nights were rough. Sometimes Emma missed her old life, then hated herself for it. Sometimes Carter would snap over small things, scared to lose what he didn't know how to keep. But they worked through it, like rusted bolts that just needed patience and the right tools. One rainy evening, a familiar black Escalade pulled into the lot again. Emma was cleaning out the tool cabinet. Carter came to the front, wiping his hands, brow creased. Emma's father stepped out. No security this time. He looked older, smaller. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to apologize." Emma didn't say anything, just stared. "I watched you try to build your life through mine, and I crushed it." He looked at Carter. "But I see what you've built here, together, and for what it's worth, you've done more with rust and sweat than I ever did with boardrooms." Then he turned to go, but just before stepping into the car, he added, "She's more like her mother than I realized." Carter slipped his arm around Emma's waist. "Damn right she is," he said. That night, under the dull glow of the garage lights, Carter and Emma sat on the hood of a car they'd rebuilt together. Music played softly from the office. Jacob was inside, asleep, a dog-eared comic book on his chest. Ever think you'd end up here? Carter asked, his voice low. Emma smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. Every day I thought I was running away. I was actually running towards something. He looked at her. No, she said. Someone. And in the quiet hum of that sacred space, part grease, part grit, part grace, a poor mechanic and a runaway heiress found the only thing neither of them knew they needed, a home.